From Myrtle Beach, it's the 7th Congressional District Debate. Brought to you by the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce and by the Grand Strand Business Alliance. Please welcome tonight's moderator, former CNN senior White House correspondent, and now Dean of the College of Mass Communications and Information Studies at the University of South Carolina, Mr. Charles Bierbauer.
Welcome to the South Carolina 7th Congressional District Debate, sponsored by the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce and the Grand Strand Business Alliance. Let's meet the candidates. The Democratic candidate is a business owner residing in Myrtle Beach, also a teaching associate in the College of Business Administration at Coastal Carolina University, Gloria Bromell-Tinubu. The Republican candidate is a tax attorney. He also resides in Myrtle Beach and is the current chairman of Horry County Council, Tom Rice. This debate will last 1 hour. We will distinguish between questions where we'd like really short answers and those for which we hope you'll have specific details. To cover as many relevant subjects as possible, it's my responsibility to cut you off if you exceed your time limit. I know the governor and the president had difficulty last night. If one of the candidates is substantively or challenged or mentioned, I'll allow a 30-second rebuttal. Joining me to question the candidates are WPDE News anchor Tim McGinnis and WMBF News anchor Michael Maley. For our viewers at home, I should tell you there are commercial breaks as part of this debate. Both candidates were given opportunity to purchase commercial time within the debate. We begin with 1-minute opening statements. It was determined by a coin toss that candidate Rice won, and so your opening statement, Mr. Rice, 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. I want to start out by saying what a great honor it is to stand here before you. I want to thank the Myrtle Beach Chamber of Commerce, the Grand Strand Business Alliance, WPDE and WMBF for the opportunity to participate in this debate. I'm here because the country is on the wrong track. For 4 years, we've pursued a policy of bigger government, bigger taxes, and more regulation. And the result is record unemployment. The result is businesses not being competitive worldwide. The result is higher fuel prices. I've got a 23-year-old son, a 25-year-old son, and a 27-year-old son. And I'm concerned that if we don't get this thing turned around real quick, that they will not have the same future that you and I have had, nor will your children or your grandchildren. Your choice in this election is very clear. Bigger government, smaller government. More regulation, less regulation.
Thank you. Ms. Tinubu.
Good evening. I am Gloria Bromell-Tinubu, and I'm honored to be here. I want to thank the sponsors, as well as recognize my husband of 36 years, Saji Tinubu. This is one of the most important elections I think that we'll face in our lifetimes. It's a matter of choice. Do we continue down the path where we've seen economic development policies that only benefit the few, versus policies that will benefit all members of our society, particularly the residents of District 7. I'm here because I'm concerned about full employment, investing in public education from pre-K through college. I'm concerned about investing in our infrastructure, as well as making sure affordable health care is available to all citizens. I have deep roots in South Carolina, being raised here and born in Georgetown County, Brook Green Gardens, and I'm here to serve all of the residents of this district, and I look forward to representing you effective November 6th. Thank you.
Let me begin the questioning. This is a new district, the 7th Congressional District, so either of you has the opportunity to kind of shape its role in Congress and to be a representative of what this district represents. So I'd like to get a sense whether you see this as inherently a Republican district or a Democratic district, an inland district or a coastal district, and how you're going to find the middle ground. Ms. Tinubu, start first with 1 minute.
Well, I see it as a district that belongs to all of the people, that will put at the center of our economic development policies the concerns of families, and particularly the concerns of children and seniors and other people who are at the margins of our society. So I really believe that we can move forward as a cohesive community, focusing on those issues that matters to all of us.
Mr. Rice, same question.
Well, I don't see it necessarily as a Republican or Democratic district. I see it as a district of the people. And you know, the most important issue to the people right now is jobs. That's true in this district, that's true in this nation. And the way to create more jobs is to make this a competitive environment for our businesses. And that means lower government, that means lower taxes, that means less regulation.
Mr. McGinnis, Tim?
Ms. Tinubu, this question is for you. And what are your top priorities if you're elected? You have 1 minute.
I just wanted to say the thing that really grows our economy as an economist with 35 years of experience and an educator is really investing in education, investing in research and development, and investing in our infrastructure. So as the representative for this district, those are the things that I will focus on in terms of growing the local economy. And we have to focus on those small businesses that don't have access to legions of lobbyists to push their agenda in Congress. So I will be here for small and medium-sized businesses and middle and lower income families, as well as those people who are at the top. But we must focus on the bulk of the community that actually needs our support.
Michael Manley.
The next question is for Tom Rice. For Tom Rice, how would you say, Tom, how would you say you most differ from your opponent, Gloria? And why would you say that makes you the better choice for the 7th Congressional District? You've got 1 minute also.
Well, I think Mrs. Tinubu stated repeatedly that she identifies very closely with President Obama and his administration, and they pursued a policy of a bigger government and bigger regulation. And I think that dampens American competitiveness. See, the world has shrunk, and we're not just competing with businesses in other districts. We're not competing with businesses in other states. We have to compete worldwide. And when we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world, it makes our businesses less competitive. When we pile on regulation after regulation, it makes our businesses less competitive. When we have laws like Dodd-Frank that take away capital through small banks, when we have laws like the regulations under EPA that force the closure of our coal plant here in Conway and the one in Darlington, and loss of immediate jobs, but it also drives up the cost of energy, drives up the cost of manufacturing. More American jobs go overseas. When we have things like Obamacare and 10,000 new pages of regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tinubu, you're asking for rebuttal on,
Do we have opportunity to rebut?
on what point, ma'am?
On the point that he made about what
I'll give you 30 seconds.
His last issue. You know, we hear this conversation about government being too big. You know, it's only too big when it's taking care of children and seniors and people who are in poverty and small businesses, according to Mr. Rice. It's not big enough when it comes to supporting special interests and friends who are engaging in local economic activity. So I think that we have to make that distinction.
If you like, Mr. Rice, we try and do equal time.
I absolutely believe that we have to have a social safety net. I absolutely believe that we have to make in concrete our promises that we've made to our seniors under Social Security, under Medicare, and under Medicaid. But what I don't believe is that we need to pile on more and more regulations on our businesses that make them less competitive, because then they can't create jobs. And that is, you know, we used to be called industrious. We're not industrious anymore. We're actually, what we're doing is we're handicapping our businesses. We're making them less competitive worldwide. We sat here for decades and we watched millions of American jobs go overseas. It's time to stop it. It's time for our government to get off the backs of business, let them get back to work, promote entrepreneurship, and bring American jobs back to America.
Thank you. Round two of our questioning will begin right after this break. Welcome back. In this round, we'll focus on the economy and jobs, with the candidates having 1 minute to respond to questions. Michael.
And the first question is for Gloria Tinubu. Gloria, parts of the PD, of course, have the highest unemployment rate in the entire state. Without Interstate 73, they're hard-pressed to attract new industries and higher-paying jobs. How would you work to bring jobs to our rural areas which have seen such a rural plant decline and closings in the past decade?
Yes.
What would you work to really hit jobs in the PD?
Yes. There's a myth that Mr. Rice perpetuates, and a lot of local economic development folks do the same, and that is that the real job creation occurs when there are no regulations on businesses and businesses get to do exactly what they want to do. But we know that 75% of the economic growth that we've seen in our economy is from training and education and from the knowledge industry. So we know that we have to provide a first-class, a world-class educational and training system for all of our citizens, from pre-K through college. That's how we grow jobs. And the other thing is we make sure that we invest in infrastructure, invest in sewer systems, in libraries, in public transportation that will generate more jobs than investing in simply just new infrastructure. If we invest in the public transportation, we'll create really nearly 20% more jobs than we would create if we created a new system. But the idea is we have to look at all of the options first before investing billions of dollars.
Thank you.
I'd like to rebut if I could.
Tom, the question for you, what specifically might you do to bring jobs?
Could I rebut that?
The question is
I think you can
directly
probably
to the same point.
Yeah, the question the same essentially. What would you do to bring those jobs to the PD, and how might your plan differ from Gloria's?
Well, nationally, there's a national level to this and there's a local level to this. Nationally, we've got the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Businesses are going to operate where they can, where they can make a profit. They've got to compete worldwide. And if we kneecap them with higher taxes, they can't stay in business competing with their competitors worldwide. Also, regulation. All this stuff has consequences. When we cut off businesses' capital with laws like Dodd-Frank, when we drive up the cost of energy by taking away our low-cost fuel source in coal, when we drive up the cost of doing business with things like Obamacare, our businesses cannot compete worldwide, and we should not be surprised when they go overseas. Locally, what I propose to do, and what I've said throughout this campaign, is I want to put an experienced economic developer on my campaign staff, somebody who will help us come up with a great plan, and I will be the #1 salesman for this district. I will do everything I can to attract good, high-paying jobs to this district, just like I have as chairman of Horry County Council.
Tim, next question, please.
I'm sure I don't have to tell the two of you, but the 7th Congressional District is a large district. It's made up of a lot of different cities and a lot of different types of businesses. But the economic engine of the Grand Strand, of course, is tourism. What would you do to bolster the tourism industry as a freshman member of Congress? And we'll start off with you, Mr. Rice.
Well, I think I-73 is the biggest infrastructure need in this district. I think it's, we have 14 million people driving in here every year. 90% come by car, 75% come off the I-95 corridor. It's just amazing to me that the road hadn't been built already. Depending on who you listen to, we're either the #3 tourist destination or the #5 tourist destination in the country. We desperately need that road, and it's going to happen one day when a hurricane rolls in, and we've got to get the 800,000 people that are on the coast off. So that's the biggest infrastructure project we have. That's the biggest thing I think we can do to bolster tourism in this area.
Mr. Tinubu, the same question for you. What would you do to bolster tourism?
Well, this district is, as you said, is very diverse, and it has a whole host of issues. 7 out of the 8 counties are persistently poor. So we have to go beyond Horry County. We have to go beyond just the tourism area. We have to look at what will need to be in place in order for the other areas to grow as well. And we must invest in education. We are ranked at the very bottom when it comes to education and training. We're actually ranked at the very bottom when it comes to business development and job creation. So even though we've had these same policies over the last 20, 40 years, we've continued to be at the very bottom of everything that is good and at the top of everything that is bad. So we must change our policies and focus on local residents. What is best for them? And training them, giving them a high quality education, and then investing in our local businesses that are loyal to us. Not chasing after these businesses that are competing with all the other counties and cities in our district. Really invest in the businesses that are creating jobs and have supported our local communities.
Thank you. Michael.
Tom Rice, you've come out as a supporter of dredging the Georgetown port. What specific actions might you take as a freshman congressman to make that happen?
Well, again, I think earmarks are gone. I think that any project, there's limited money for infrastructure, but that doesn't mean the federal government is not going to be investing in infrastructure. Of course they will. We're going to have to keep our infrastructure up, and we're going to have to build new infrastructure, or we'll fall behind the rest of the world. We won't be able to compete. And obviously, ports are a critical part of that. How can we allow our ports to close and compete worldwide? So the dredging of the Georgetown port is a fairly low cost, relatively low cost, and I think it will have a great benefit. What I'd love to be able to do is to be able to argue the merits of that and prove to my colleagues in Congress that that project has merit. And in response to what Mrs. Tinubu said earlier, I totally agree that we need to keep up our investment in education. I wouldn't do anything to cut that. But what I'm more concerned about is making sure that the people have jobs once they graduate. 50% of college graduates are either unemployed or underemployed. That is a far more important current pursuit. It is abominable. It's a shameful statistic. I have 3 sons who have just graduated from college. One just moved to Chicago to find a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Gloria, kind of getting back to the topic a little bit, your thoughts on dredging the Georgetown port?
But before I say that, I want to say Mr. Rice said that he will hire an economic development expert. When you vote for me and elect me, you will have an economic development expert. Going to the issue of dredging the Georgetown port is absolutely critical that we do that. I would hope to serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee of the House of Representatives. In addition to that, I really believe that we have to put in place a national policy for looking at all of our ports and making sure that we're not competing in South Carolina, Georgetown against Charleston for resources. We need to make sure that we are clear about our national interests, and having ports is a part of that in order to create our competitive edge that we need. One of the deficits that we really talk about is the trade deficit, and that's clearly connected to the accessibility of our ports. So I'm in support of it and would work to put in place a national agenda as your new Congresswoman.
Thank you. When we come back, we'll have our lightning round of quick questions and quick answers. Welcome back to the South Carolina 7th Congressional District primary debate. No, we're not the primary. This is the real thing. Before we begin this round of questions, we'd like to thank Brad Dean and the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, and also Mike Wooten with the Grand Strand Business Alliance for sponsoring the debate. Now, this is our lightning round where we'd like to get your quick responses on a number of hot-button issues. No rebuttals in this round. Let me kick it off. As South Carolina's economy moves, and we certainly hope it does, it's certainly going to be moving into a more sophisticated manufacturing, technological base. Do you see, Mr. Rice, any need in that environment for a greater acceptance of unions in these businesses?
No, I do not. South Carolina has been quite successful in attracting high-paying technical jobs across the state. If you look at BMW, if you look at Boeing, if you look at Continental, if you look at Goodyear, if you look at Amazon, and you can go on and on and on. And these jobs came here because we are a right-to-work state. That's why we got those jobs. And I think
Ms. Tanubu, wait, this is the quick one. Ms. Tanubu, this dichotomy between unions and right to work.
South Carolina has been a right-to-work state since 1954, and it's continued to be at the bottom of every economic indicator that's positive. There's no correlation between being a right-to-work state and creating positive job results. I mean, Mr. Wright makes up these stories that we're supposed to believe, but they're not true. The data shows that states that have right to work laws tend to have lower wages. We may create jobs, but what are the quality of those jobs? People are continuing to stay below the poverty line. There's a place for unions. If they worked for unions, we would not have the workplace issues that we have today.
Tim.
A lot of people out of work now, unfortunately, and a lot of those people staying out of work even longer. Quick answers. Would you extend unemployment benefits, Ms. Tanubu?
Yes.
Mr. Rice?
No, I wouldn't, but what I would look to do is to add a work requirement to get unemployment benefits. I think that it's wrong to encourage and continue a dependency culture.
Michael.
Many viewers in this 8-county district are merchants themselves. They feel there is over-regulation by the federal government. What, if any, regulations would you like to see changed or abolished? Tom Rice.
In the course of campaigning, I go in businesses across this district, and there's one question I always ask. I say, do you see the government as an entity that facilitates your business or an entity that is an obstacle that you have to get across? And it's normally about that time that the top of their head blows off. And I wonder how we got here. What a shameful thing that is. We used to be industrious. The government has got to get its foot off business neck and let them create jobs, let them expand, and we'll be prosperous again.
Thank you. We're going to take another break. We'll be right back. We're back with the regular 1-minute questions in this round. Tim, you've got the first one.
Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, businesses with pools are now required to have permanent pool lifts installed. Yet some local businesses say portable pool lifts are safer, more cost-efficient, and more effective. And as you know, we have several hotels and rental properties in the 7th District which have to comply with these new regulations. Do you support this type of legislation, Ms. Tanubu?
Certainly it's important for us as a government to make sure that people who have particular challenges would have access to public as well as private facilities. Of course, there has to be a balance between making something excessive. I believe that this is something that can be adjusted in a way that will benefit both those hotels as well as the people who use them. But to say that all regulations are just bad, we shouldn't impose regulations, it just doesn't make sense. We saw what deregulation did to the financial industry when Glass-Steagall was repealed, and we were on a financial cliff because of that. So if there's reasonable regulation, and I believe that this is probably one that could have some tweaking.
Mr. Rice, same question. Do you support the legislation?
No, I don't. I think that obviously I support people who are handicapped having access to facilities, public or private, but it has to be reasonable, and to require a fixed mechanical lift for every body of water, no matter the size, is another example of ridiculous federal overreach. You know, one size does not fit all. So no, I do not support that legislation.
We'd like to give each of you a chance to ask the other candidate a question. I think you knew this was coming, and the opportunity is all yours, starting with Ms. Tinubu.
Mr. Rice, you talk quite often about anti-government and government not having a role to really play in the private sector, that the private sector are job creators, and the narrative goes on and on. Yes, yet you are leading an effort that they have dubbed Project Blue that puts at risk nearly $25 to $30 million of public dollars with very questionable outcomes. How do you justify that project that's conveniently being put on hold until after the election, November 13th? But even your friends on the council have said this is bad business, it's not good for the taxpayers, it's leaving them with a burden that is not necessary. How do you jive the two? How do you jive your talk about the government, anti-government, and then you're imposing government? You're really selecting a winner in this case, in the case of call centers.
I don't think the government can create jobs. I think the private sector creates jobs, but I think the government can create a fertile field for job creation. Now, with respect to Project Blue, you know, I made sure from the very beginning that there were protections in there for the taxpayers and that no taxpayer dollars would be invested unless and until the bank's money was on the line, the developer's money was on the line, the landowner, and the building was built, the equipment was in there, and 400 employees were in place. And unless and until all those dominoes come into place, no taxpayer money will ever be at risk. And I'd rather not talk about the deals that might not go through. Let's talk about the ones that have gone through. You know, when I ran for chairman of county council, I ran to create jobs. And we created a revitalized economic development corporation, and we have tripled job production in Horry County in a year and a half, and I am very proud of that. And I want to bring that same effort to the entire district. Thank you.
And now the tables have turned. Your question for Ms. Tinubu.
Ms. Tinubu, given your pro-labor union stance and the fact that to attract jobs, we have to have a competitive environment, what is your specific plan to bring jobs to this country and this district?
Thank you for the question. We know that jobs and productivity are really connected to education and training. And I've said that in a knowledge economy, it's absolutely ridiculous for us not to invest in our children and in their future. We tell them to go to school, get a college education, and then there are no jobs for them to get. So one of the things that we must do is do that, train them. Science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM areas, we must focus on that because those are really the jobs of the future. In addition to that, we must make sure that we have the infrastructure necessary for local economic development to occur. In my little town of Plantersville, the majority of the residents are still not connected to the public sewer system. That is unconscionable. So we must invest in infrastructure, and we must provide research and development for small businesses who don't have access to the resources that larger businesses have access to. Those are the ingredients for economic growth and job creation.
Thank you both. Good questions. You'll put us out of business over here. We're going to take another break. In this section, I have several questions on national and foreign issues, and again, 1-minute answers. If you're really substantively challenged, we'll go to rebuttal. But I mean, there's always lots of time to go back and forth, but time moves rapidly. Let me ask you, after last night's debate, and I want to start with you, Mr. Rice, after last night's debate, how comfortable are you with Mitt Romney heading the Republican ticket? Does he help you or hurt you?
Oh, I'm very comfortable with Mr. Romney heading the Republican ticket. I believe he believes in smaller government and American entrepreneurship. And with respect to foreign policy, I think that we really don't have a foreign policy right now. And I think that what you see happening in Benghazi and around the world is a result of lack of American leadership. I think America needs to lead. I think people look to us to lead, and I think we have a real lack of leadership today.
Conversely, Ms. Tinubu, does President Obama help or hurt your campaign, and why?
One of the things that I believe occurred last night is a really demarcation between the two philosophies about our economy and what is in the best interest of our citizens. I believe that the president believes in economics as I understand it, and that is the management of our resources for the long-term benefit of all. And I believe that Mr. Romney believes in this thing that we call crimatistics, which is the manipulation of property and wealth for short-term profit. And those aren't the same things. He might understand crimatistics, but he really does not understand economics, as Aristotle first coined the term. So we've got to talk about well-being of all members of our society and not just a select few.
I'd like to rebut that if I could.
Yes, 30 seconds, Mr. Rice.
I'd like to rebut.
I guess if Mr. Romney's attacked, you're attacked. So 30 seconds, please.
Well, the management of our assets for the benefit of all sounds a lot like socialism to me. I don't believe in socialism. America is called the land of opportunity, and what we need to guarantee here is opportunity. We don't guarantee outcome. You know, capitalism is the best incubator for innovation that has ever been. It has made this the greatest country that has ever existed on earth. And why we would want to go away from that is beyond belief.
Thank you. Ms. Tinubu, you get your 30 seconds too.
Aren't you really tired of that phrase, socialism? Let's be a little bit more creative than that. Can we be a little bit more creative than that? You know, this is absurd. You know, we're talking about public policy. Government is a social enterprise. It's us coming together as society saying there are things that we have to do together that we can't do by ourselves. Mr. Rice is okay with government as long as it supports him and enriches himself and his friends.
Thank you.
But when it comes to seniors and our children, all of a sudden it's socialism. Seriously?
Thank you.
Seriously.
Again, a question I want to ask each of you, starting with Mr. Rice. Healthcare has been one of the central issues of the presidential campaign. If you're elected to Congress, would you vote to abolish, and the issue comes up, would you vote to abolish all or part of the Affordable Health Care Act? And if so, what would you propose in its place? I
absolutely would vote to repeal Obamacare. I mean, there are a couple of things that are good about Obamacare, one being the pre-existing condition, one being the fact that you can keep your kids covered till they're 26 years old. You know, there's certain aspects of it I like, but how could it be a good thing for government to run our health care? How could it be a good thing for government to make our health care decisions for us? That needs to be between a doctor and a patient. There are a lot of proposals out there, one put out by Tom Price that's with respect, you know, what we need to do is get more people insured. I agree with that. I agree with that. But does that mean the government needs to take over health care? Absolutely not. There are a lot of people who are upset that Horry County runs the trash dump. The trash dump. But yet we think the federal government should make our health care decisions for us? Again, a dramatic overreach. 10,000 new pages of regulations, 10,000 new IRS agents, more cost to our business, makes American business less competitive, more American jobs go overseas.
Thank you. Mr. Tinubu, I assume you'd like to keep Affordable Health Care Act. What else would you do? What else would you do on behalf of your constituents?
Not only would I keep it, I believe that, you know, there are some things that we've determined as a society as best provided through collective mechanisms. Our infrastructure, highways, bridges, we've determined that our health is one of those categories. And to make it such that people have to go bankrupt in order to deal with an illness or a catastrophic situation is unconscionable to me. And I believe that we can do as other 21st century countries are doing. Provide affordable public health to all citizens of this country and do it in a way that doesn't bankrupt them. Healthcare is one of the highest and fastest growing costs that everyday working families have to face. Mr. Rice knows this, and to say that about this district that is persistently poor, where people are health challenged, suffering from high blood pressure, cardiovascular diseases, shortening of their life expectancy, low birth rate, that says to me that you really is questionable about your interests in terms of the citizens of this district.
Mr. Rice, you've been challenged in that segment. If you'd like it, I'll give you 30 seconds to respond.
Well, absolutely. I think that we need to make health insurance affordable, make medical care more affordable, and there are ways to do that. One is to increase competition between insurance providers. Let them compete across state lines. One is to allow uninsured people who are either self-employed or unemployed and therefore can't get on an employer plan to join as a group sponsored by the federal government. But let them get private health insurance. Let them own their own health insurance plan. So when people leave an employer and go to another employer, that they don't lose their coverage. There are a lot of ways to do this short of the federal government nationalizing our health care system.
Thank you.
It is private.
These segments go by too quickly. We'll be right back. Welcome back. More big picture questions in this segment. Tim, it's your turn.
With the U.S. national debt at over $16 trillion, what specific actions do you support to reduce our national debt? And would that include raising taxes? Ms. Tinubu.
One of the things that we should not have done, and I would support us not doing this in the future, is engage in multiple wars that are not paid for. That's what we saw under the previous administration, which increased our debt, coupled with the reduction of revenues in terms of lowering taxes. There's no way that we could not have not had a debt because of the way that policies were implemented. One of the things that we can do is to really separate our capital expenditures from our current expenditures so that we're comparing the right things. Most industrial countries do that. Most businesses do that. Most states do that. They separate their capital expenditures from their current everyday expenditures so that we can finance those capital expenditures using the right kind of debt instrument, and then use our revenues to fund our current expenditures. That's one of the things that we can do that will get us talking the same thing and not continue to have this unsolvable debate that we're currently having.
Thank you.
Mr. Rice, what would you do? What actions would you support to reduce debt, and would it include raising taxes?
Well, she's talking about an accounting trick. She's not talking about any solution to the deficit problem. I think that to solve our deficit problem, it's so large, people don't realize how big it is. You know, under the 3.5 years President Obama's been in office, our debt's grown by more than any administration in history. There's only one way to solve it. I think, you know, with entitlements being at $1.9 trillion a year, the interest on the debt being at $300 billion a year, that's $2.2 trillion. Well, today, we're only taking in $2.1 trillion. So that puts us at a deficit before you spend one dime on any other federal program, to include things like defense, before you buy the first bullet, to include things like infrastructure, before you build the first road, before you spend any money on the Department of the Interior, or the State Department, or the FBI, or the CIA, or the White House. That's how bad the problem is. And you're not going to solve it just with raising taxes. You're not going to solve it just with cutting spending. It's going to require an overall overhaul of the tax system, of the spending caps, and it's going to require entitlement reform.
Thank you. Michael.
A recent report has come out that said Social Security, as we know it, will run dry, gone by 2033. Tom, in 1 minute, what would you do to prevent that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
A report has come out that suggested Social Security, as we know it, those benefits to all the Grand Strand retirees and PD retirees, is gone by 2033. If that's the reality, what would you do to prevent that from happening?
Well, you know, that's one problem, but I'm even more afraid of Medicare being bankrupt in 2024, 12 years from now. I mean, we've got huge problems with entitlements. With respect to Social Security, you know, we can fix that with some tweaks. We don't have to affect anybody who's already retired or anybody who's even close to retirement. But for those who are younger than 55, you know, there may have to be some delay in retirement. There may have to be some means testing. I'm not talking about dramatic things, but gradual increases over decades will make our Social Security program solvent. This is a promise we've made to our seniors, and we've got to get used to living up to our promises. We've got to make it concrete, and we can do it, and it can be relatively painless.
Gloria, how do you fix Social Security?
Let me just go back to a comment Mr. Rice made earlier about an accounting trick. I'm very surprised, Mr. Rice, that as a tax lawyer, that you would say that separating capital expenditures from everyday current expenditure is an accounting trick. I am terribly amazed by that. Tell those corporations that do it every day. Tell the state and local governments that do that every day. To go back to Social Security. And Medicare. Mr. Rice supports the Ryan budget, which totally changes how we deliver Social Security and Medicare as we know it. That's what he says. He totally supports it. We must make sure that we preserve both of those institutions, which isn't socialized or socialism, but it is public investment in people who've invested into a system that they're now retired and they deserve our care. So I will work very hard to make sure that the resources are there to protect them.
Pardon? Mr. Rice, I'd like to give you 30 seconds.
She put words in my mouth. I'm not specifically tied to the Ryan plan. I'm not specifically tied to Bowles Simpson. What I am saying is it's going to require some sort of all-encompassing plan. And I haven't heard any plan out of the administration or Ms. Tinubu at all. And they're telling you Medicare is going to go bankrupt in 12 years. What's your plan?
You're the tax accountant. You're the tax lawyer. Do I get to respond to that?
You're rapidly losing your closing statement.
Okay, well, I don't want to lose my closing statement.
All right.
I'll reserve.
We'll be right back. So many questions, so little time. We're going to go right to closing statements. You have 1 tight minute, Ms. Tinubu.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you for coming out. I entered this race because I am committed to restoring the American dream for all of us. Our children, our seniors, people in rural communities, people in urban communities. I believe in that. I realized the American dream as a daughter of a farmer and a maid who worked right here in Myrtle Beach. We must do the things that we need to make sure that dream is available to all of us. Investing in education, investing in full employment, investing in infrastructure, and making sure that people have access to affordable health care. I'm an economist, an applied economist who's trained to really understand and solve real-life problems. I also have a master's degree in agricultural economics. I'm asking you to vote for me. You won't have to hire another economist. I will be your economist. I will serve you and the people of the 7th District. Thank you for this opportunity, and God bless you.
Mr. Rice, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you to everybody who put this on. People, I grew up right here in the 7th District. I was raised by a single mom, school teacher at the Air Force Base. I raised my family here. I worship here. I built my business here, representing people right here in the Grand Strand and the PD. You have a really stark choice here, a really big difference, a chasm between us, a clear choice. You can choose between higher taxes or more economic freedom. You can choose between more big government and regulation, or you can choose between more jobs. You can choose between big government or more freedom. This is a critical election. The future of the country is at stake. I'm Tom Rice, and I'm asking you for the honor of your vote.
And that's the last word for tonight, but you, the voters of South Carolina's 7th Congressional District, have the last word in less than 3 weeks. On behalf of our sponsors, the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce and the Grand Strand Business Alliance, our thanks to both candidates for joining us this evening. Thank you to Tim McGinnis and Michael Maley. The election is November 6th. Make your voice be heard. I'm Charles Beerbaugh. Thanks for being here.